Nearly all of us get sick at some point or another during the year, and it can happen at really inconvenient moments when we're building up to a big ride or event and suddenly we're cut back by the dreaded lurging. It can be so frustrating, especially when you're starting to build up some momentum and really feel your fitness improve. But how long should you really take off if you do find yourself sick, and how long does it take to get back to where you once were in terms of fitness? It's time for some answers. Okay, so I'm making this a week after getting absolutely clobbered by the flu, and it got the whole family. It was a tag team effort, and it's going around at the moment. So if you are suffering yourself and you're part of a family, first up, you got to make sure you look after everyone else as well, because you're not just getting yourself better, you're getting everyone around you better too. And it can be easy to panic. If you've got a goal in mind, you're training hard, you get sick, and it all goes out the window, you panic, and you think all is lost. But I think the first lesson is to realise that it's not. All the times when I was racing and I took things easy, that was when I got back relatively quickly. I didn't lose too much form, and I managed to get back on top of things. The times when I panicked and tried to come back too soon, that was when I really set myself back and took a lot longer to recover than really it should have done. But how long should you rest for, and when should you rest?
The first answer is wait until you're completely better. There are no benefits to riding while you're ill, only risks, and the fact that you could potentially sweat out an illness, that is not backed up by science whatsoever. So you're only going to put your body under more stress when it should be focused on fighting infection. Following the above the neck, below the neck mantra is a good starting point when deciding whether you can train or not when sick. So above the neck, that's things like runny or stuffed nose, headache, sore throat. Generally, if you're feeling this, then you're okay to carry on riding as long as you reduce your intensity. Symptoms below the neck, that's things like a fever, coughing originating in the lungs, and also muscle pains. That's when you need to stop, rest, take time off the bike to recover properly. But once symptoms have cleared up, when should you start training again?
Depending on the severity of your illness, it's recommended that you should take 24 to 48 hours of being totally symptom-free before you start riding again. And then once you do get riding, you should take the next 2 to 3 days really easy, low intensity, not starting out hard from the gates.
This, of course, can be hard to do. You've been off the bike for a while and you're super eager to get going and start training hard from the get-go. But that's not the best idea because it can be an injury risk. Your muscles and your legs aren't in the rhythm for riding, so you're potentially going to create a lot of muscle soreness, which is going to be quite hard to recover from, and you're just not in the frame of mind, the frame of body to start pushing yourself hard once more. Plus, if symptoms do return, then you're potentially looking at more time off the bike, as you're going to sit yourself back even further by going out and absolutely belting yourself when you weren't quite ready for it. So taking it gently to begin with is a really good safety net.
After this period has finished, now is the time, if you're feeling ready, to get back to your previously planned workouts. But for the next first block of serious training, it's probably a good idea to reduce your intensity and also up the recovery time between intervals. Basically, continue to ride within yourself throughout your next set of tougher efforts.
Depending on how long you're out of your usual training routine or program for, can be a tough call to make when you recover from a sickness and decide where you should pick things back up from. If you've been out for 5 days, sick for 5 days, then generally it's okay to pick things up from where you left off.
If you're sick for 1 week or more, now might be time to reevaluate things and look at the bigger picture. Don't panic too much, you won't have lost that much fitness still, but it might be time to look at your training before you got sick and potentially go 1 or 2 weeks back and pick things up from there. That's from when you first noticed symptoms and your sickness developing. Basically, rewind back through your training cycle and pick things up, like starting from a chapter in the book 1 or 2 chapters back.
Another good indicator of your recovery is your resting heart rate. So if you know what your morning pulse is before you got sick, you should be waiting for it to return to that level before you resume training. Now, it's a great habit to get into, measuring your resting heart rate every single morning. You can simply do it by tracking your pulse and writing that number down. Or you could use wearable tech to keep track of it via your wristwatch or an app, so you don't have to remind yourself to do it every single morning. It's a good habit to get into because you can track your heart rate, and if you do see it start to become elevated, you can knock your training back, rest up, recover, before you push on without seeing those symptoms of a sickness developing, which is going to save you plenty of missed days from the bike in the future, and also any sort of time off which is going to impact your training further down the line. So you can knock things off, nip them in the bud, so to speak, rest up and get back to it much sooner than you would have done.
Enough from me though for the time being. We were recently at the Ruler Classic and caught up with Neil Henderson, coached some really high-level elite riders, and we asked him how he deals with sickness when one of his athletes is struck down.
If you get sick and you have to take time off the bike, generally speaking, you're going to lose some fitness. If that duration of time that you're completely off the bike is around 2 weeks, you're probably losing maybe 5 or 10% of your fitness in general. Now, depending on the type of illness and the severity of it, there can be very different experiences there. If it's a week or less, generally speaking, you might not lose a lot, but once you get into that 2 weeks or longer, we start to see a little bit bigger decay, and you're going to see a bigger difference in some of your high-end power, like your VO2 max or like 5-minute power would be a little bit more affected than would be just kind of like your steady state or baseline fitness and aerobic fitness. So working with an elite athlete, if they have something that takes them off the bike for about 2 weeks, we'll start off at that first week at most 50% of their overall volume of what they were doing prior. So a lot of cases, they're somewhere in the 20, 25 hours a week is kind of a normal training week when they're healthy. If they have some sort of illness that takes them off the bike, that first week back is going to be maybe 10, at most 12 hours. We're going to ease back into it consistently, but without any very long or very intense sessions. That's the really important thing, kind of getting some consistency back with 1, 2, maybe 3 hour rides. And a lot of times we'll do like 2 days with a little bit of progression, 2 hours, 3 hours, then come back to an hour easy, 2 hours, 3 hours, again, back easy, something like that, just to not do too much too quick. When we consider that same thing for your average weekend warrior who maybe is only training less than 10 hours a week, it's a pretty similar idea that we go to about 50% what you're used to doing, with, again, keeping the intensity down in that first week and that volume, maybe a couple hours. If your long ride had been 4 hours leading into getting sick, cutting that down to about 2 hours for a long ride for that first week back. Second week, if everything is responding normally and your resting heart rate is coming down and you feel good, then going up to about 75% on the second week. And by the third week, if everything has gone well in those first 2 weeks, then you're probably ready to get back to 100%. If you're somebody who's been training for an event and you've been committed for many months and building up, and then you have something that derails you, you get sick and you have to take time off, realize that not all is lost. Yes, you're going to have a little bit of a step back initially, but it's very possible for you to actually have your best performance still if you, number one, don't over stress what you're losing in that period of time down. We always say in training and overall that health first, fitness second really pays off. And so you need to get your health back to 100% before you can get your fitness to 100%. So getting healthy without trying to derail yourself is important. So taking that time down and then thinking about your mental training in that period of time. When you are not actually physically training, you can actually be working on skill sets and things that actually may help you on race day by being able to get yourself calmed and be able to manage stress and anxiety. And so it's not all is lost. It's something that you can hit that reset button. You can't control what's already done and what's in the past. You can only move forward from where you're at now. Get healthy, then you can get to it.
There are, of course, a few practical things you can do to reduce your chance of getting sick in the first place. First one, and probably the main thing to do, is avoid overtraining. Avoid doing too much, too soon, too early, when your body isn't quite ready for it. You want to ramp your training up gradually, so bit by bit, increase your workload rather than going full gas, taking on too much, and allowing yourself to risk crashing all the way back down again.
Of course, this is the time of year for germs and bugs to be going around, so making sure that you follow all the usual hygiene practices that we've become accustomed to is a great starting point. So remembering to wash your hands regularly, not sharing bottles, and also if you're going to go into a crowded, poorly ventilated area, look to maybe wear a mask. Also, good idea to make sure you keep on top of having a balanced, great nutritious diet and plenty of sleep too. On the topic of diet though, it's really important that you fuel properly during and after tough rides. Making sure you get enough carbs on board after a tough spin will make sure that you dampen any inflammatory immune responses and also counteract any exercise-induced immune dysfunction. Basically, fuel up and increase your resilience.
If you're unsure what exercise-induced immune dysfunction is, basically your body experiences an open window 3 to 72 hours after you've completed a tough ride, depending on how hard you've gone. During this period, your immune system is suppressed, so you can be a little bit more susceptible to picking up germs and bugs, which is why it can pay off to be a bit more vigilant after you've completed a tough ride and make sure you practice those illness prevention techniques. So if you have just completed a 200-kilometer epic, now might not be the best time to head off to a busy supermarket and complete the food shop. Maybe save that for an easier day. But those are the sort of things that you need to take into account and maybe plan around your riding.
If you're looking for more information on what to do when you get sick, be sure to check out some of our other videos on the channel, including why you're so tired and what to do when COVID strikes. It's never fun getting sick, but it is an unavoidable, misfortunate aspect of life in general, really, isn't it? So try and take it easy, rest up, get better soon. And if you did find this video useful, please give it a big thumbs up and let us know in the comment section below how you're managing to cope with cold season this year. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.